Storytime with Stone. Mr. Fox by Flora Annie Steel. Lady Mary was young and Lady Mary was fair, and she had more lovers than she could count on the fingers of both fucking hands. She lived with her two brothers who were very proud and very fond of their beautiful sister, and very anxious that she would choose well amongst her many suitors. Now amongst them was a certain Mr. Fox, handsome, young, and fucking rich. And though nobody quite knew who he was so fucking gallant and so fucking gay that everyone liked him. And he wooed Lady Mary so well that at last she promised to marry him. But though he talked much of the beautiful home to which he would take her, and he described the castle and all the wonderful things that furnished it, he never actually offered to show it to her. Neither did he invite Lady Mary's brothers to see it. Now this seemed to her very strange indeed, and being a lass of spirit, she made up her mind to see the castle if she could. So one day, just before the wedding, when she knew Mr. Fox would be away seeing the lawyers with her brothers and all that shit, she just kilted up her skirts and set out unbeknownst for, well, see you, the whole household was busy preparing for the marriage feastings to see for herself what Mr. Fox's beautiful castle was like. After many searchings and much travelling, she found it at last. A fine, strong building it was. High walls and a deep moat all around it. A bit frowning and gloomy, but when she came up to the wide gateway, she saw these words carved over the arch. Be bold. Be bold. So she plucked up courage and the gate being open, went through it and found herself in a wide, empty, open courtyard. At the end of this was a smaller door, and over this door again there was a carving this time saying, be bold, but not too bold. So she went through it to a wide, empty hall and up the wide, empty staircase, and then at the top of the staircase there was a wide, empty gallery at one end of which there were wide windows with the sunlight streaming through them from a beautiful garden below, and the other end a narrow door, and over the archway of that narrow door was carved, be bold, but not too bold, lest that your heart's blood should run cold. Now Lady Mary was a lass of spirit, and so of course she turned her back on the sunshine and opened the narrow, dark door, and there she was in a narrow, dark passage. But at the end there was a chink of light, so she went forward and she put her eye to the chink, and what do you think she saw? Why, she saw a wide saloon lit with many candles, and all around it some hanging by their necks, some seated on chairs, some lying on the floor, with the skeletons and bodies of so many beautiful young maidens in their wedding dresses that were all stained with blood. Now Lady Mary, for all she was a lass of spirit and brave as brave, could not look for long on such a horrid fucking sight. So she turned and fled, down the dark narrow passage, through the dark narrow door, which she did not forget to close behind her, and along the wide gallery, and she fled like a hare. And she was just going down the wide stairs into the wide hall when what did she see through the window? But Mr. Fox, dragging a beautiful young lady across the white courtyard. There was nothing for it, Lady Mary decided, but hide herself as quickly and as best she might, so she fled faster down the wide stairs and hid herself behind a big wine butt, stood in the corner of the wide hall. She was only just in time, for there at the wide door was Mr. Fox dragging the poor young maiden along by the hair, and he dragged her across the wide hall and up the wide stairs, and when she clutched at the banisters to stop herself, Mr. Fox cursed and swore dreadfully, and at last he drew his sword and brought it down so hard on the poor young lady's wrist that her hands were cut clean off, jumped up into the air so that the diamond ring on the finger flashed in the sunlight as it fell. Of all places in the world, into Lady Mary's very lap as she crouched behind the wine butt. Then she was barely fucking frightened and thinking Mr. Fox would be sure to find her, but after looking about a little while in vain for, of course, the coveted diamond ring, he continued his dreadful task of dragging this poor, beautiful young maiden upstairs to the horrid chamber, intending doubtless to return when he had finished his loathly work and seek for the hand. But by the time Lady Mary had fled, for no sooner did she hear the awful dragging noise pass into the gallery, than she upped and ran for her fucking life through the wide door with be bold, but not too bold, and graven over the arch across the wide courtyard past the wide gate with be bold, engraven above it. Never stopping, never thinking till she reached her own chamber, and all the while the hand with that diamond ring lay in her kilted lap. Now, the very next day when Mr. Fox and Lady Mary's brothers returned from the lawyers, the marriage contract had to be signed, and all the neighbourhood was asked to witness it and partake of a splendid breakfast, and there was Lady Mary in her bridal array, and there was Mr. Fox looking so gay and so gallant. He was seated at the table just opposite Lady Mary, and he looked at her and said, "How pale you are this morning, dear heart." Lady Mary looked at him quietly and said, yes, dear sir, I had a bad night's rest, for I had horrible dreams." Then Mr. Fox smiled and said, "Well, dreams go by contraries, dear heart, and tell me your dream and your sweet voice will speed the time till I can call you mine." "I dreamed," said Lady Mary with quite a smile and her eyes perfectly clear, "that I went yesterday to seek the castle that is to be my home, and I found it in the woods with high walls and a deep dark moat, and over the gateway were carven these words, 'Be bold, be bold.'" Mr. Fox spoke in a hurry, but it is not so, nor it was not so. Then I crossed the wide courtyard and went through a wide door over which was carved, be bold, but not too bold," went on Lady Mary, still smiling, her voice cold, but of course, it is not so, and it was not so. And Mr. Fox said nothing, he sat there like a stone. "Then I dreamed," continued Lady Mary, still smiling through her stern eyes now, "that I passed through a wide hall and up a wide stair and along a wide gallery until I came to a dark, narrow door, over which the words carved were, 'Be bold, but not too bold, lest that your heart's blood should run cold.' But it is not so, of course, and it was not so." Mr. Fox said nothing, he sat there frozen. "And then I dreamed that I opened the door and went down a dark passage." Lady Mary continued smiling, though her voice was like ice. At the end of the passage there was a door, and the door had a chink in it, and through the chink I saw a wide saloon lit with many candles all around. There were bones and bodies of poor dead maidens, their clothes stained with blood. But of course it's not so, it was not so, it's just a dream, right? By this time all the neighbours were looking Mr. Fox's ways with all their eyes while he sat silently. Lady Mary went on, a smile creeping across her lips. "Then I dreamt that I ran downstairs and had just time to hide myself when you, Mr. Fox, came dragging a young lady by the hair, and the sunlight glittered on her diamond ring as she clutched at the stair rail. And you, with your sword out, cut off the poor lady's hand." Mr. Fox rose in his seat stonily and glared about him as if to escape. His eye teeth showed like a fox beset by the dogs, and he grew somewhat pale. He said, trying to smile through his whispering voice could scarcely be heard, "But it is not so, dear heart. It was not so, and God forbid it should be so." And then Lady Mary rose in her seat as well, and the smile now left her face, and her voice rang as she cried, "But it is so, and it was so. Here's her hand and ring that I have to show." And with that, she pulled out the poor dead hand with a glittering ring from her bosom and pointed it straight at Mr. Fox. At this point, all the company rose and drew their swords, cutting down Mr. Fox and slicing him to pieces. And well, served him fucking right, didn't it? The end.